Welcome back to the Logan Explorers podcast, the show where we uncover the stories of the past and explore the people, places, and events that shaped the towns we know today. I'm Logan, and in tonight's episode, we're traveling into the heart of western North Carolina to a town with a deep and fascinating history. A town whose story wasn't built by a single person or a single event, but by generations of families. Families who cleared forests, built businesses, led governments, and helped turn a small frontier settlement into a thriving community. Tonight, we're exploring the story of the families that built Statesville, North Carolina. When you walk through downtown Statesville today, past the brick storefronts, historic homes, and quiet streets, it's easy to forget how much history lies beneath your feet. But every town has its founding families. And in Statesville, some names appear again and again throughout its history. Their stories are written into the town itself, into its buildings, its businesses, and even its politics. So tonight, we're stepping back in time, back to the frontier days of North Carolina, back to the people who first settled this land, and the families who helped build a town that still stands strong today. This is the story of the families that built Statesville. To understand Statesville, we first have to go back to a time before the town even existed, the mid-1700s. This region of North Carolina was still largely wilderness, rolling hills, thick forests, and fertile farmland stretched across the landscape. For generations, the land had been home to Native American tribes, including the Catawba Nation. But during the 18th century, waves of European settlers began moving into the region. Many traveled along a historic migration route known as the Great Wagon Road. This road stretched from Pennsylvania down through Shenandoah Valley and deep into the Carolinas. It carried thousands of settlers southward in search of land and opportunity, and eventually, some of them stopped here. The area that would eventually become Statesville was first known as the Fourth Creek Settlement. It wasn't much at first, just scattered farms, small homesteads, and families trying to build new lives on the frontier. But among those early settlers were families whose names would become deeply tied to the future of the region. One of the earliest influential names was the Allison family. One of the earliest figures connected to the area was Greenberry Logan Allison. Allison was part of the generation of leaders who helped organize early frontier communities. Men like Allison weren't just farmers. They often served as judges, politicians, and community leaders. In early settlements, leadership roles were critical. Someone had to help establish law and order. Someone had to recognize local courts. Someone had to represent the interests of settlers to the colonial government. Families like the Allisons helped shape the political structure of the region. And through their leadership, communities like Fourth Creek slowly became more organized and stable. Over time, what began as scattered farms started to resemble a real town. In 1788, a major step towards the creation of the town took place. The North Carolina legislature established Iredell County, North Carolina. The county was named in honor of James Iredell, a respected statesman who would later serve as one of the first justices on the United States Supreme Court. The creation of the county meant the region needed a county seat, a central town where government business could be conducted. Courts held, records kept, and so the small settlement at Fort Creek began to grow into a town. By the early 1800s, the town had a name, Statesville. And as the town grew, certain families began to rise in prominence. One of those families was the Simontons. The Simonton family became one of the most respected and influential families in early Statesville. Among them was Richard F. Simonton. Simonton was known for his involvement in commerce, agriculture, and local leadership. Families like Simontons were the backbone of early towns. They invested in land, they built businesses, and they helped establish the local economy. Their legacy can still be seen today in one of the Statesville's most historic homes, the Simonton House. The house stands today as a reminder of the prosperity and influence of some of the town's earliest citizens. Homes like this weren't just places to live, they were symbols of success, leadership, and stability in a young and growing town. As Statesville continued to grow through the 1800s, politics began to play a larger role in the shaping the community. One of the most influential names connected to the region was Vance. The most famous member of the family was Zebulon B. Vance. Vance served as the governor of North Carolina during the Civil War and later as a United States Senator. He became one of the most powerful political figures in the state during the 19th century. His influence reached across North Carolina, including communities like Statesville. The Vance name would become forever tied to one of the most famous landmarks in the city, the historic Vance Hotel. For decades, the Vance Hotel stood as one of the most important gathering places in the city. Travelers stayed there, politicians met there, business deals were negotiated there. Hotels like the Vance were often the social centers of towns during this time period. And through places like this, families like the Vances helped shape the political and economic life of the community. By the mid-1800s, Statesville was already a growing town, but one development would change everything: the railroad. When the Western North Carolina Railroad reached Statesville, the town entered a new era. Railroads were the highways of the 19th century. They connected towns to markets. They moved goods. They brought new people, and they fueled economic growth. With the arrival of the railroad, Statesville suddenly became an important transportation hub. Merchants opened new businesses, warehouses were built, and industries began to take root. A new generation of influential families began to rise. These weren't just landowners or politicians. They were industrialists, entrepreneurs, business leaders. By the late 1800s, manufacturing began transforming the economy of Statesville. Furniture factories became especially important. and one man played a major role in that industry: Edwin Wiley Hall. Hall helped establish the Statesville Chair Company. The company quickly became one of the town's most successful industries. Furniture from Statesville began shipping across the country. The factories employed hundreds of workers. Entire neighborhoods grew around the industrial districts. Families who owned these businesses became some of the most influential figures in the city. But they didn't just build factories. They helped fund schools, churches, public buildings, and civic organizations. Their wealth helped shape the modern version of Statesville. Today, if you walk through downtown Statesville, North Carolina, you're walking through layers of history, historic homes, old brick storefronts, churches that have stood for over a century. Many of these buildings were built by the very families we've talked about today: the Allisons, the Simontons, the Vances, the industrial families who helped build the town's economy. Their influence shaped everything from local government to education to business. And even though generations have passed, their legacy remains, sometimes in obvious ways: a historic building, a family name on a street, or a landmark that still stands today. And sometimes their legacy is quieter: the structure of the town itself, the institutions they helped build, the community they helped shape. Every town has its founding stories, but towns aren't built by events alone. They're built by people, families who took risks, families who invested in their community, families who believed in the future of a place long before anyone else could see it. And in Statesville, North Carolina, those families helped build a town whose story is still unfolding today. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Logan Explores Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow the podcast so you don't miss future episodes exploring the hidden history of towns across America. And until next time, keep exploring.